A biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
Well, of course, dust isn't really even settling yet on what's happened in the United States. It certainly has been something of a landslide victory to the Republicans under Donald Trump. And a lot of people have been saying, how did Donald Trump win? Well, Bill Muehlenberg is back with us today, basically saying, how did the Democrats lose? And entitled his latest article, How to Lose a US Presidential Election. Bill, a special welcome back to 2020.
Many thanks indeed.
Bill, US elections, they are examined forensically, top to toe. Everyone's got an opinion. Give us your thoughts on why you're talking in one of your latest articles about how to lose a US presidential election.
Yeah, well, everybody was kind of expecting, right, Kamala and the Dems to get in. They had so many things going for them. Heaps more money, almost the entire mainstream media at their beck and call. All the celebs, right? Everybody from Oprah to Beyonce and Taylor Swift, Lady Gaga, right? All coming to sing the praises. So from that level, you would think, well, it would have been a shoo-in. But of course, we know she lost, well, hugely, massively. Just name every indicator, right? The Republicans flipped the Senate. They're going to probably hold the House. They won the popular vote, the Electoral College vote. They have the majority of governors. So on every indicator, the win was huge. So how do you account for this? Well, I think, very simply put, you could say this. If your whole campaign is based on two things and two things alone, one, hate Trump, and two, abortion, and that basically sums up Kamala's whole campaign, well, thankfully, most Americans said that's just not enough. That's not going to cut it. I'm trying to feed my family, put petrol in the car, trying to pay off the mortgage, worried about crime and illegals flooding the border. Those were the things ordinary, everyday Americans were very much concerned about, and none of that was ever addressed by Kamala. So I suppose that's your answer. People voted with their feet. They voted with their pocketbook. They knew, hey, I've got a family to feed. I want food on the table. Most of these Democrats couldn't tell you what a carton of eggs costs, but your average American, they sure knew how much it cost and how increasingly couldn't afford even basics like that.
Bill, so far as Christians, and, we've talked often enough to know that when we're talking about various political parties, left or right, it's policies that matter rather than just the personalities who are in charge. But it's interesting when you say those were the limited issues, and one of those was the abortion issue that Kamala Harris was running on. For the Christian, it's very, very difficult to come down on a positive when anyone has abortion at their platform. This is an interesting thing, isn't it? Because Christians will often say, well, surely there are Christians on the Democrat side of politics as well, or the left side of politics, as much as they're on the right. Any thoughts here?
Well, there are. Whether or not they always should be is another question. But, as we often say as well, Christianity is ultimately, in one sense, above party politics, right? Jesus is not a Republican nor Democrat. However, having said that, we live in a real world, which means we live in a fallen world. Sin abounds. Governments were set up by God to deal with sin, to deal with evil, and try to bring a modicum of justice, order, and peace. So even on those parameters, which God ordained, you'd have to ask which of the two parties was better on all those sorts of issues, which would have protected the border better, which would have been better at international relations and reducing the wars around the world, which would have been better at feeding, hungry and poor Americans, which are getting to be more and more as time goes on. Which party would, even with all of its faults, be more or less pro-life as opposed to the other party, which is, absolutely 100% pro-death. We even had the leader, right, Kamala, telling Christians Christian pro-lifers at one of her rallies, right? She said, "You're at the wrong rally. Get out." So put all those little bits and pieces together. That doesn't mean that the Republican Party is God's anointed, but for, again, the best we can come up with in a world that's full of, difficulties and tough decisions, I would think for the great majority of Christians, this should have been a no-brainer. Yeah, Trump, with all of his faults, he was going to do a lot more in terms of basic Christian principles on so many fronts than the Democrats, who were just getting so far to the left.
Hey, what are your thoughts here on celebrity endorsements? Because, it seems to be that in earlier presidential campaigns, all the celebrities lining up to support their candidate has been an impressive way to maybe get some people across the line. But you've got Beyonce and Lady Gaga and Katy Perry and Oprah Winfrey, all these celebrities who lined up. Have they got egg on their faces now that somehow or other their endorsement didn't resonate with ordinary Americans?
Yeah, well, trying to buy votes, and that's basically what you do. Oprah was given $1 million for her chat with Kamala. Well, look, again, ordinary Americans struggling to put food on the table. Actually, they don't give a rip about Beyonce and Lady Gaga. What they care about is their family, paying the mortgage, getting enough to keep the car running. That's what they're worried about. That was nothing to be found in the policies of the Democrats. All they, again, talked about was Trump is evil, he's Hitler, he's going to destroy the universe if he gets in, and abortion is the great sacrament that we all must bow down to. Again, ordinary Americans struggling in pain, a world of pain, financial pain, social and other kinds of hurt. What is Beyonce going to tell them? They're going to go back to their $1 million pads in Hollywood and New York and live the good life. They're not fazed at all by how they vote, but the ordinary person on the street trying to get by. So, yeah, it was a complete waste of money. And speaking of waste of money, not only was $1 million paid to Oprah and so on, the Democrats got over $1 billion. And guess what? They are now still in debt. They blew $1 billion, mostly on these stupid celebs and entertainers. They're now still in debt. And what did it get them, right? Nobody bought it. Nobody was, fooled or conned by having a few celebs trying to tell them that life is going to be wonderful if you just have another 4 years of Kamala. So it was an absolute waste in so many ways, and it really took Americans for fools. I think, they looked down on ordinary Americans, and now they're scratching their heads trying to think, well, how did we lose? What did we do wrong? And they're still blaming everybody but themselves.
Before the election, Bill, I was hearing people say this will be the end of the Republican Party. It will go into a demise. It will disintegrate and they'll have to rebuild from the ground up. It appears to be the opposite is happening or may be true. Any thoughts here about how Democrats who, as you say, how to lose an election, how they might even, chance their possibilities on rebuilding?
Yeah, well, it's the exact opposite of what the pundits and the media elites were saying. The Republicans are more united than ever, stronger than ever, like I say, clean sweep, House, Senate, White House, you name it. The Republicans are in charge. They're doing great, and with Vance very well placed to win one, maybe two more 4-year terms after Trump goes. I mean, this could be a 12-year Republican stay. Who knows? Unless the Democrats change radically, and now a few Democrat advisors are starting to say this, hey, we've let the woke wonders on the hardcore left capture the Democrat Party. Unless they say no to that, put an end to that, they're going to continue to be on the margins. They're going to continue to be totally ineffective and unresponsive to the needs of ordinary Americans. So the Republicans are going from strength to strength, and it's the Democrat Party that is now disintegrating big time.
Betrayal as a word comes to mind, and while I was suggesting that the celebrities might have a little egg on their faces, as you say, $1.3 billion, I think, raised, those contributors and some of those big-time givers, they may feel betrayed, but ordinary people who would vote Democrat, do you think that betrayal is something that they will be feeling, or will they be feeling, anger and resentment and we've got to get revenge?
Well, I think many Democrats are now waking up and, seeing a bit of reality. They were lied to and conned by the Democrat machine, by the media elites. In fact, in my newest piece on this, I quote not one but two very important Democrat fundraisers. One of them, for example, in her lifetime raised over $50 million for the Democrats. Both of them I'm quoting in my article, and they're both saying this has been disaster, an utter epic disaster. We got $1 billion+ and it was all completely wasted on useless celebrities. And the ordinary people just didn't like it. In fact, that gal who had done a $50 million fundraising, she even said she voted for Trump in this election. And she's saying, so many of these people we pressured, we said, you got to give, Kamala's going to win, she's on the cusp of a massive victory, just keep giving. A lot of these Democrats are now really upset, and they do feel betrayed. They were lied to, they were conned, and all the money they gave did absolutely no good. Better to have saved it and just, feed the family and do something more useful with it. So, there's a real sense of something's gone horribly wrong. Sure, the diehards, the true believers, they will never admit for a moment that they got things massively wrong, but there's a slow but certain awareness that, hey, this whole thing has been a disaster, and unless we change tack and radically, we're going to be doomed for the political wilderness for many years to come.
Well, we can't be ignorant and think that somehow or other the same left issues aren't prominent here in Australia. Advancing LGBTQIA plus rights, what is a woman, all of the challenges around what the Democrats stood for. Are these likely, do you think, to overflow into our own electioneering that's coming up, because we've got a federal election due early next year? Any thoughts here?
Yeah, well, a lot of people are already talking about that. What happens in America does impact the whole world, including Australia. Sure, the two nations are different in many ways, but as you just pointed out, the same kind of core issues, right? Cost of living, buying a carton of eggs, filling up the petrol tank. All these things are stuff that the Australian population is worried about, not the stupid identity politics, not DEI, not all these elite minority fringe agenda items, whether more abortion or paying for trans surgery for kids, right? All these lefty things that everybody thinks is so great, except ordinary Australians. I think it'll be much the same come election time. People have had enough of these really liberal elites, liberal as in leftist, who are taking the once, it's the same as America, the once working class party of labor. Well, it's again almost completely spun around. Now we got the Liberal Party really championing the working man, whereas the Labor Party is now again the home of the elites, those from the inner cities, the Chardonnay sipping, right, elites who are pushing DEI policies, identity politics, and don't really care about the cost of living and all the things ordinary Australians do. So just as Republicans are now the party of the working man, a big reversal, I think it's happening here as well.
Well, we always say Christians look at the policies, talk to your local member, and there might be some challenges that are coming ahead. I'll point listeners to this, one of the latest articles that Bill Muehlenberg's written, How to Lose a US Presidential Election. And there might be a few thoughts there about what might be ahead for an Australian election if there's not some softening on some of those hardline values of the left. Well, Bill, I'll point listeners to billmuehlenberg.com or simply Google Culture Watch, one word. Bill Muehlenberg, thanks so much for another interesting update today on 2020.
Thanks again, Neil.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.